They might be man's best friend today, but that wasn't always the case. So how did dogs go from insults and outcasts to beloved pets? Did Greeks and Romans care about their dogs beyond just using them as tools? And how did they name their canine companions? Dogs have been around for at least 10,000 years, and it's likely that there wasn't just one domestication of wolves, but actually it happened a number of times, even from different species of wolf. Since that early domestication, no other animal has quite been treated like the dog. For one thing, their burial is treated uniquely in antiquity. Aside from cats in Egypt, dogs are the most consistently buried animals. And in a place called Ashkelon, just south of Israel, there was a dog burial of over 1,200 animals. That's the largest animal burial of any kind in antiquity. But this isn't just a one-way relationship. Dogs have adapted themselves to being human companions. They are better at reading face and body language than chimpanzees. Unlike most animals, they can tell where you're looking, which makes it easier to steal your pizza. Some tests even suggest that dogs have a greater ability with language than trained chimpanzees or 3-year-old children. And this communication goes both ways. Studies have shown that humans can recognise the emotion in dog barks despite not knowing the dog or the context of the bark. If we contrast this with another close companion to humanity, cats, a cat's brain has far less development of the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain used for social bonds and language skills. Similar experiments to the dog barking show that cat meowing requires you to know the cat involved to understand what it's on about. And the key difference here is probably that cats were used as mousers, primarily nocturnal, and they didn't really need human interaction, whereas dogs had a wide array of uses that required communication and close bonds with the humans involved. And over time, this has meant they've developed differently. Now, during the Stone Age, dogs were relatively small, but when the Iron Age and the Roman Age came around, they got bigger again, and much more specialised. There was almost certainly selective breeding involved. The Romans and Greeks knew what made a good hunting dog. And the severe deformities of some of the lapdog breeds are reminiscent of so-called designer breeds today. Let it never be said that a dog's good health got in the way for human desire for fashion. But this relationship did not start on such positive ground. In fact, in early Greek literature, dogs are the outcasts, social pariahs, dirty scavengers. They were exiled from many holy places and were so consistently associated with every vice you can imagine that Monash called them God's worst enemies. But just how fair an assessment is this? Well, let's start with the granddaddy of all Western literature, Homer. Consistently, throughout the Homeric epics, dogs are used as insults, and their main role is to devour corpses. They had their uses as guard dogs or ritual sacrifices, but the negative connotations are pretty clear. Despite this though, we do get some positive examples. Achilles has 9 table dog, Trapezdes. The Odyssey has Argus, Odysseus' faithful hunting dog who waited for 20 years for his master to come home. But the excitement of seeing his master after so long was too much, and sadly he died instantly. There are also Eumaeus' dogs, who fawn over Telemachus and lick his face. So there's a clear distinction between the wild scavengers, the useful dogs, and the domestic dogs. But even the domestic are really dangerous. The same dogs which lick Telemachus' face almost tear Odysseus to pieces. Specific dogs might be friendly, but in the abstract, dogs are still this very negative, wild force. And they are used as insults more than any other animal. Next up in Hesiod's Theogony, an epic summary of Greek myth, we have the 2 mythic dogs, Cerberus and Orthrus. Cerberus is depicted as ravenous and having 50 heads. The dogs of Hesiod are fierce and wild, hardly our friends. Similarly, the lyric poets have nothing positive to say about dogs at all. It's worth noting though, Apollodorus thinks that there are half-human dog-headed people, and Herodotus seems to think they live in Africa, so clearly dogs are taking up some free real estate up here. Tragic plays similarly portray a very negative view of dogs. The only person who uses them in a positive way is Clytemnestra in Agamemnon, who compares herself to a faithful hound waiting for its master to come home. There are here elements of a reality where there is a close bond between dog and master. But the irony is, Clytemnestra will end up killing her husband, and so there is a deliberate inversion of dogs as a negative here, which just reinforces that negative stereotype. Okay, but these are all highbrow, epic literature. What about more down-to-earth, realistic portrayals of life? Well, in the 6th century BCE, Aesop's fables have a story about a donkey and a lapdog. The donkey is jealous of the master's affection for the lapdog, so tries to copy him. He breaks into the house, jumps on the master's lap and starts licking his face. We can also look at the Greek comedies of Aristophanes in the late 5th century. In The Wasps, there's a trial put on, with one dog accusing another of eating all the cheese. Knowing dogs, I think he may be guilty. But the defence argues that he's a faithful shepherd and pet of the master and would never do this. The dog's puppies come onto stage and start pleading for leniency with the jury. By this point, dogs are seen as a familiar and sympathetic animal, and they have vices and faults that people still find amusing today. And we know dogs must have been popular because of just how frequently they turn up in myth. In the real world, dogs had all sorts of jobs. They impacted transport, food, clothing, security, agriculture. They had a role in entertainment. The Greeks had dog fighting, and the Romans took animal fighting as entertainment to a whole new level in the arenas. But dogs also had a key role in ritual and religion. And you might want to skip this bit if you're a bit squeamish. Dogs have a close ritual tie to the earth, and therefore life and death. We've already seen how a dog is the guardian of the underworld. As a symbol of death, statuettes of dogs have been found in graves in the Roman provinces. And this goes to the extent that in some regions, dogs would be sacrificed to goddesses of the underworld. Pausanias talks about sacrificing dogs to Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, and Spartan youths during their education in the agoge would be required to sacrifice a puppy to Enyalios, the god of war. On the other hand, dogs could be closely associated with life and childbirth. Certain images of mother goddesses have lapdogs, like Nehelania, Epona and Serana. At the temple to Nodens in Gloucestershire, there were votive offerings of dog statues. But childbirth was incredibly dangerous, and Romans and Argive Greeks might sacrifice dogs to ensure a safe childbirth. There was also an annual ritual in Rome called the Supplicia Carnum. This was a ritual sacrifice of dogs where they were carried through the streets on little Y-shaped crucifixes. This is supposedly a way for dogs to atone for not waking the Romans up when the Gauls attacked. But it seems a bit unfair to me. Poor dogs. At the inaugural feasts of pontiffs as well, dogs could be eaten as part of the feast. And this mystic element of dogs also meant that they got used for medicine as well. Pliny says that dog's blood could help with narcotic poisoning, and various other bits of dogs were used for nits or eye problems. The ashes of their bones helped with jaundice, and their menstrual blood helped with rabies. It all seems pretty gross if you ask me. In more everyday life, lots of dogs were guard dogs, and we see plenty of evidence of this in mosaics in Pompeii. Cave canem, beware the dog. But the role of dogs most discussed by ancient authors is that of hunting. This might be because most of our sources are very wealthy, and so their main way of interacting with dogs was through hunting. For me, these hunting guides are most useful because they give us an insight into the types of breed of dog available in the ancient world. So what breeds do we know of? Perhaps the two most famous are the Molossians and the Laconians. Molossians were massive, heavy-built dogs with a blunt nose and short ears, and you really wouldn't want to meet them in a dark alley. Laconian dogs, on the other hand, were more lithe, thin with longer noses and longer tails, a lot like a greyhound or a whippet. But there were loads of other breeds as well. War dogs from Asia Minor were used for hunting big game like boar. They were tough, had a ruff around the neck, and, according to Pergama Malta, helped the gods fight the giants as well. Look at those good boys go. Indian dogs were tall with short ears. Cretan dogs were harriers with long noses and tails. Gallic dogs from France were considered the fastest of all harriers, and they had a signature tail which was long with a tuft at the end. As for myself, I'm a bit of a terrier lover, so it brings me great joy to tell you that Britain is and always has been the home of the terrier. The Agassian was a British breed which was small but fast with a really good nose. They were highly esteemed and considered to have much more strength than they might look. They may well be paired with a kind of Irish dog which looks a lot like the Irish wolfhounds of today, with a long snout and more lithe body. But there are loads of other breeds too. The Locrian, the Vulpine, the Castorian, Paeonian, Ausonian, Carian, Thracian, Iberian, Arcadian, Argive, Lacedaemonian, Tegian, Sarmatian, Celtic, Manesian, Armorgian. There were two native Italic breeds, the Umbrian and Oscan, but we don't really know much about them. And it seems like there are at least two breeds from North Africa. The long-eared and long-tailed dogs from the Udine mosaic, or the bigger, short-nosed ones with the cheeky tail from the Boar Hunt mosaic. Now, pet breeds are less talked about, but we do know the Melitaean was a kind of lapdog. And we have plenty of examples of different kinds of small dog in inscriptions of various depictions. And they were clearly such a common sight that they could be made fun of. In the Satyricon, a satire of Roman city life, the wealthy Trimalchio has a repulsive, fat lapdog called Pearl, who's just as round as her namesake. For all this then, how much did the Greeks and Romans actually care about their dogs? Were they more than just tools? Certainly they were well revered. Xenophon calls them inventions of the gods, and Aelian has some really nice stories about them. He claims Pyrrhus of Epirus once adopted a dog whose master had been murdered, and used its later anger at some soldiers as proof of their guilt. More amazingly, Elian claims that there is a kingdom in Libya where they are ruled by a dog, and when he whimpers, they know he is happy, and when he barks, they know he is angry. But we can turn to archaeological evidence to have a look at how much they meant to real people. Pompeii has lots of mosaics and frescoes depicting dogs, so we know they were an important part of life. But for me, the most striking is a wall fresco where someone has turned Aeneas and Romulus, two of Rome's founding fathers, the most important figures in their mythology, and turned them into dogs. Perhaps these were their pets, immortalised as legendary heroes, a joke we still appreciate today when we dress up dogs for Halloween. We can also look to inscriptions to help us out. People would delight in their dogs' achievements, as we can see from votive offerings to Artemis as thanks for a successful birth. This was really impressive, as the dog Gorgo had 9 pups while hunting a stag. Yeah, with 9 more of those, I think the deer of Crete need to be worried. We have even more evidence from ancient gravestones. There are a number of epitaphs to dogs from their owners. So this stone tells that it contains the white Maltese dog Eumelus, a faithful guardian. They called him Bull while he lived, but the silent paths of night possess him now. Sometimes these stories would embody the voice of the dog talking to you from beyond the grave. Parthenope, Pretty Face, tells us she was a friend to her owner. I have deserved this grave. Looking at it, find yourself a worthy friend who is ready to love you while you are still alive and care for your body when you are gone. Just as often, these stones record the harsh emotions felt by the owners who have lost their friend. So with Patricius, bedewed with tears I have carried you, our little dog, as in happier circumstances I did 15 years ago. So now, Patrice, you will no longer give me 1,000 kisses, nor will you be able to lie affectionately round my neck. You were a good dog, and in sorrow I have placed you in a marble tomb. You would have matched a human with your sly ways. Alas, what a pet we have lost. You, sweet Patrick, would join us at the table, and fawning in our lap would beg for food. Your greedy tongue would lick the cup often held for you, and you would always welcome your master with a wagging tail. These dogs were more than just animals or pets, they were friends and family. It seems owners could take great care over their dogs, and they could live extremely long lives if well looked after. In this place lies a little dog after an accomplished life, and sweet honey covers his body. His name was Fuscus, and he was 18 years old. Barely could he move his limbs in his old age. In my opinion, the most touching one of all is the epitaph to an unknown dog. You who walk past and see this stone, please don't laugh that it is a tomb for a dog. Tears are wept for me, and my master's hand heaped the soil over me, who also carved these words. There's something intensely human and understandable about these epitaphs. They show these dogs were far more than just useful. They were friends and family to the Greeks and Romans, just as they are today. Now, let's say I'm an ancient Greek or Roman and I've just got some puppies. How am I going to name them? Most names handed down by the ancient world are for hunting dogs, either because they are from mythic lists of the dogs that tore apart Actaeon, or they're from Cuna Getica hunting manuals written by people like Xenophon. This means the names we have are overwhelmingly 1. Female, as the ancients believed that female dogs were better for hunting. 2. Disyllabic, because 2-syllable names are apparently better for shouting long distances. And 3. Related to hunting. This means we have a lot of names like Catcher, Swiftfoot, Mountain Climber. For these hunting dogs, almost half have descriptive names, like Gethius, Joyful, Argiodus, White-Toothed, or Lachner, Fluffy. And many of the rest have names directly tied to the role that they fulfill, like Porthon, Destroyer, or Nebraphone, Deer Killer. The descriptive names are fairly evenly split between speed, strength, character, and physical appearance. Any names actually taken from myth are usually named after monsters like Harpy, Centaur, Dragon. On the other hand, dogs' names found elsewhere are much less focused on the dog's job. The largest chunk is descriptive, again, and what I call domestic. And in the domestic names we see that close relationship we talked about earlier. These are either pet names like Issa, meaning little miss, or jokes like Letharges, meaning lazy, or Labes, meaning greedy, or they are just straight up names, like Patrick and Stephen. When these dogs do get descriptive names, they're far less concerned with speed and strength. It's much more about character and appearance. We also see more dogs named after where they're from, after an animal, or given a joke for a name. We've only got 3 dogs named after myth: Nike, Gorgon, and Helen, so this seems to be a little less popular as well. Now, the overall picture is of course skewed towards the hunting dogs because there's just so many of them. Descriptive names take up almost half of all, but aside from that, there's quite a lot of variety. And actually, descriptive is a big umbrella for lots of other smaller categories. There was no one way to name a dog in the ancient world, except perhaps if it's a hunting dog. And so the chances are, whatever people have named their dogs today probably has a parallel in the ancient world. If you want a closer look, and maybe find an equivalent to your own dog's names, I've linked the spreadsheet I made in the description. Why not tell me your favourites in the comments? For me, the best Greek name is that of Odysseus' pet dog, Argus, the one we mentioned earlier who waited 20 years for him to get home. Now, Argus very literally means flashing, but this has a lot of connotations. One interpretation is it refers to his flashing coat because it's shiny and white with old age. Argus was also commonly used to mean fast because his feet move so quickly they're flashing at you. Which makes sense because Argus was a famous hunting dog. He was really good at his job. But Argus is also a byword for a watchman. It's in this way that Argus can actually just mean dog, because they have flashing eyes, they're always watching. It's in this sense that also gives name to Argus, the great monster, who has 100 eyes all over his body and watched over the cow Io. This is particularly poignant for a dog who has waited for so long to see his master. And finally, perhaps the best interpretation of Argus is it's an unrelated word that means lazy. So, we have a beautiful 4-for-1 in a dog name. He's got a shiny coat, he's watchful, he's swift as the wind, and lazy as a dog. It seems clear to me that the Greeks understood dogs pretty well. I hope you enjoyed that wander through the world of ancient dogs. It's a bit of a longer video than usual, and than I intended, but I hope in the future you'll join me for more of these, where I can delve deeper into a topic. And if you like this one, why not check out 1 or 2 of my other videos?